Alright, I'm here to recommend a video game today, ABI-DOS. Check it out on Steam. In order to really understand why I'm going to recommend, though, I had to explain something called genre theory. I run the game development club at fucking University of Tennessee, Knoxville, which is, I'm kind of self-taught on a lot of this stuff. But one thing I want people to understand before I start talking is what it means to be a genre. A genre is not like a checklist. You can't really agree on a certain checklist that makes something, let's say, a roguelike. That's inherently silly. There's something you can look up called the Berlin interpretation, when a bunch of people actually got together and tried to figure out what makes a roguelike, and nobody could fucking agree on shit. Instead, it's a lot easier to think about genre as sort of an evolutionary tree instead of a checklist. What makes something a roguelike is the fact that it was in some way or form inspired by Rogue. Rogue inspired NetHack, which inspired Dwarf Fortress in the modern day, and inspired something like Cogmine. They're both, ASCII games, very complicated, very dense. It also went on to inspire The Binding of Isaac, which is fundamentally inspired by, but very different from, and Isaac inspired many modern roguelikes like Hades and Dead Cells and Enter the Gungeon. Again, you can pull up a giant evolutionary tree of almost any game you can think of. I think that's awesome, and I'm here to talk about one particular branch, which is algorithmic puzzlers. I know that's kind of crazy sounding.
This is Exapunks, and it's a perfect example of an algorithmic puzzler. And the reason I'm talking about this particular branch of the evolutionary tree of fucking game design is because I really like it, and because there's been like 8 of these so-called algorithmic puzzlers made by one guy, and I finally found one made by somebody else, which is, if not as good as, it's better than anything made by Zachtronics. But we do need to start here, because Exapunks is a perfect example of a type of game I'm talking about. It's this 90s hacker aesthetic game where you program small little robots that run around in other people's computers and talk to each other and, solve puzzles for you. And the key is, as you can see there, solving a puzzle once isn't enough. You need to complete 100 test runs of that puzzle, even given different starting conditions. So this one, you're just reading from a file and then sending it somewhere else. But as you move through, you complete test run after test run. So you need to create an algorithm that can solve the puzzle every time. That's what makes it so fun. I know it sounds like a basic concept, but it gets really, really interesting later on. There's this later puzzle where you have to find valid credit card numbers out of a supercomputing company's fucking like dump cache, so that you can scam them and fraud them. And this one took me a while, but it was a fantastically inventive puzzle. I found myself like coming up with all kinds of new ways of doing things. There's a different one where you're like trying to frame a politician by overwriting his fucking DNA records and shit in like a government database. I like the stories in these games. I like how much they focus on, making it seem like you're really doing something with what you're doing. This is another game by the same developer, Zachtronics, called Opus Magnum, and it is also an algorithmic puzzler and a damn good one. But here you're trying to combine, the 4 Greek elements, earth, fire, air, water, and the various alchemical compounds. Again, every puzzle has a little story telling you what you're trying to make. In this one, we're trying to make, like, hallucinogens out of fucking lead and air particles, which I think is awesome. And it's just, again, programming a little set of arms. One of the other big things these games always do are these histograms to compare yourself with every other player who's ever played it and done this puzzle, to see how fast you did it, how many parts you used, how much space you took up, and you can have a lot of fun going back and optimizing for any of this stuff. Like, in the last time I played through this game, I tried to optimize the speed as much as I possibly could, and I had a great time with all the puzzles. It gives an incredible amount of replay value. I really like Opus Magnum as well, and I believe algorithmic puzzlers are an excellent and new genre. I highly recommend the entire Zachtronics collection on Steam seen here. If you really like them, check out this one, Zach-like. It's the guy who founded Zachtronics, Zach Barth, left his like first 20 odd games in one little collection along with a set of notes on like what was happening in his life, why he decided to make it, what his early thought process is. If you've ever been a big fan of any kind of manga, you know how satisfying it can be to watch an author become a better artist over the course of their career. You can see changes in their art style chapter, and this honestly does a similar thing for Zach Barth, because you can see his entire career and you can watch how he innovated over time, what ideas he kept, what he didn't. I think it's really cool. A personal favorite game of mine by him, though, is a smaller one called TIS 100, and I think it's the most direct piece of inspiration for ABI-DOS, which I'll start talking about later. In this one, you receive an old computer from your uncle, and you're tasked with getting it working again. And you soon realize that it doesn't work like any computer you've ever seen. It might be from another dimension, and you get to feed like little lore bits throughout. I always love that bit. You need to get its basic operations functional, such as file sorting, sequence indexing, etc. It has incredibly few assets. These are the only two like screens in the game, is the segment list and the segment sections themselves. And of course it has the classic little bits of histogram just like before. And again, gets really, really complicated, but really, really fun. And you write an algorithm to work continuously. It is an incredibly satisfying puzzler, and I think it's remarkable just for how few assets it uses for what it is. And it's precisely because I like many of Zachtronics games so much that I've tried to create a couple like it on my own. This was one of my attempts to create something similar to Exapunks, where I wanted you to be able to give code. I was thinking of making it like magic themed and having you control like little homunculus motherfuckers. Right now, it just moves around. This was one day worth of work, but this was a demo, and I'm still very glad I made it. The other one I tried to make, which honestly did wind up looking a lot cooler, was you would combine like the four humors, like, you know, yellow bile, black bile, blood, and phlegm across like various different magic circles to combine them, and you could draw like that, and it was built on this weird bit of geometry called a Penrose grid. It was it was really fun to program most of this. Here's my fucking schizo wall where I tape ideas for games, and this specific Penrose tiling one came from this set of papers, which are some of my favorite I've got up here. I just like to look at my old ideas, you know, even if they don't work out. I still fuck with it. Anyway, point is, I've tried to make stuff like Zachtronics. It's hard to do, and if it was easy, everybody would do it. And other people have tried. I've also played The Farmer Was Replaced, which isn't as directly inspired, but still takes a lot. And I've also played While True Learn, which I didn't like. It just didn't have the satisfying puzzles and the histograms and all the features that I really love, and they didn't have much of a story, you know? I love the story. And when I say that, I'm not hating on these other, you know, non-Zachtronics games that have come out since then. I think they're solid games. Again, I have tried and failed to make my own algorithmic puzzlers, and that's because it's fucking hard. If it was easy, everybody would do it. But at the end of the day, some of them are just better games. ABI-DOS is that game. It's some. ABI-DOS starts out incredibly simple, you know, small sizes, very few problems to deal with. Essentially, you control a computer much like in TIS 100, and you have to get all of its vital functions running again, so you have all these little bits that serve as its puzzles. So here, signal duplicator, first one, just take an input signal and process it to an output signal. All data in this game is handled as these tiny things called qubits, and then you place down a bunch of different items with which you can create and use these qubits. There's also challenge modes to do it within a much smaller area than before. I was going for a walk earlier. I think I actually figured this one out, if I remember correctly. We'll see. Yeah, and it looks like I did. Man, I'm fucking goated at this shit. This game is incredibly fun. You're always being able to go out and think of new solutions. I think that's one of the greatest strengths. That's why I think this is really done so well at being an algorithmic puzzler, is because it's a sort of game where you walk away and you think to yourself, damn, how else could I do this? You know, how could I fit this in a smaller space? How could I come up with something new? That's special, man. There's not a lot of games that really make me feel like that. If I'm talking about algorithmic puzzlers, ABI-DOS is the best there is. And man, do some of the later ones get really fun. I'm not doing challenge mode or anything else, though. But there's all kinds of crazy shit to deal with, and a lot of your solutions really do wind up looking, especially later on, like circuit boards in a way. They look crazy. They look all over the place. You look fucking, I mean, shit gets complicated. I couldn't even tell you how this works right now, but when I put it together, I thought about every single bit, everything I would move, everything I did. You can get so much fun out of a game like this, especially if you're trying to go back and re-look at each of your solutions. I'm just gonna flash up a bunch of my best solutions, and all of these are ones I've solved. Even though this is an overall glowing review, I do have some minor gripes with the game. I think the story is really lackluster, but at least there is one. I mean, the computer talks to you, and I very much appreciate that there is one that like histograms load weirdly slow. It's kind of hard to see, and they mark a bunch of this stuff as not recommended, even when it's really useful. But again, all very minor, ignorable gripes in a game that I otherwise enjoyed very much. I think it's incredibly special when a game can make you walk away, still be thinking about it, and then come back and solve something you couldn't before. It's an excellent feeling, and there's no genre that gives you that little eureka feeling more than an algorithmic puzzler, and this is the best algorithmic puzzler there is. I fucking like ABI-DOS, and I want as many people to play it as I can possibly get to.
Alright, and last but not least, remember to like and subscribe. I spend a lot of time looking for games like ABI-DOS, and I play a lot of, frankly, dog-ass games on the way there, and I filter them out for you. And if you like games, then I'm here to give a serious, informed recommendation purely for fucking love of the game. It's not bullshitting. I like video games. I genuinely want more people to play them. That's why I'm making these. Have a nice night.